Welcome back to another episode of the How to Get a Job podcast. Today, we're actually not going to be speaking on how to get the job, but we're going to be talking about the salary negotiation and how you can ensure to make more money. We're even going to talk about maybe you're at a job that you don't like and you want to exit. How do you exit and not just leave money on the table, but exit with making money? And so today, to talk about this, I have Keri-Lynne Shaw. She's the founder of the Salary Bump. She's former chief human resource officer who built comp structures and approved and denied exit packages and now flipped to the other side. KL, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm amazing. Thanks. Yeah, I came over to the brighter side from the dark side.
So what do you think is the biggest myth when it comes to salary negotiation?
There's so many. I think most people don't realize that they can ask. And I think they think that if I ask, they might either think I'm greedy or even, goodness knows, pull the job offer. That is so rare. So that I think the biggest myth would be that they're afraid the job offer is going to get pulled.
Let me play devil's advocate, right? I think a lot about this from a job seeker's point of view. And I say, well, KL, that's easy for you to say. You have a very successful career. I cannot afford to lose this job. I look at the news and I hear all these people being laid off. I hear all these companies, like people losing their job. Like, a company doesn't need me. I need the company. And when I think about negotiation, it's all about leverage. I feel like I have zero leverage. So which means I have zero negotiating power.
Okay. Great positioning and something very real that a lot of people feel. What I'm doing is showing you the other side and what HR and what the company is thinking. So I think I am a kind of person that focuses on fact and not emotion. When it comes to negotiating, and what you just described is very emotional. I need this job. I need the company more than the company needs me. Says who? That's not accurate. So how much of this is coming from a place of fear and emotion, and how much of it is actually fact-based? The fact is, if you are the chosen one and the offer has come to you, they want you. They don't want the B candidate or the C candidate. They want you. You're the A candidate. So on the HR side, I am getting heat from the business saying, KL, you better close Daniel. You do whatever it takes to get Daniel to say yes. Daniel is our guy. We need him yesterday. Close him. So I've got the business breathing down my neck saying we need to get Daniel. I know in my toolkit that I have a range that I am allowed to spend, and I can go above that budgeted range with approval. So, and I will say, I am expecting you to negotiate. And 87% of the time, there's a study from Fortune that said the answer is yes when you negotiate. So there is actually no reason for you not. If you look at it from the perspective of maybe it's just a conversation, it's not a negotiation, but if you're in a sales function, you're in a customer facing function, you're in a finance function where you're dealing with vendors, you're in an HR function, I want to see how you're going to have this conversation with me, because you will be negotiating on behalf of the company. So I have heard people get once an offer was pulled from a woman who was made an offer. She was a CFO, and they pulled the offer because she didn't negotiate. So there are a lot of reasons to have these conversations, and they don't have to be ugly and like come in guns a-blazing. No, it's like, listen, here's some of the other jobs that I'm interviewing for. Here's some of the ranges. I'd love to get closer. Like, you can create an environment that is not aggressive and have a conversation around it. And that's what I recommend and how I coach my clients.
Do you think that there is different demographics or maybe female, like, okay, let me slow down a little bit. In my career coaching experience, I worked with a lot of minority students, with college students coming out of college, right? And I noticed a trend that students from South America and Asia coming from a we culture versus an I culture. America is very I for like first. Tend to negotiate less or want to negotiate less because they just this level of like respect for authority. And so even in Colombia, like it's just not common. Like you just don't negotiate with the corporation. They have all the leverage. Do you see that a lot? That like different demographics tend to negotiate less than others.
Yes, men and women negotiate differently, right? We have a gender and racial pay gap. That's what I'm on a mission to close because women are negotiating less. It's a fact. Culturally, you're not wrong, but just because if you come from, I work with clients all over the world, but if somebody is coming from another country and that is a belief system that they grew up with, but they're in the US, they have to be retaught on how it works culturally. And even if I am in another country, I'm still going to negotiate, even if it's not seen as appropriate. I'll give you an example. I became an expat in Germany and I was working for BMW and I was following a love, actually. He is German. We met in the US when he was on assignment and I really wanted to go be an expat. They wouldn't approve me being an expat because I was going for myself in a way, but of course I was adding major value to the company. I met this guy, he offered me a job, it was a sales job, and I negotiated the job and he told me, I have to pay you the same as the guy surfing the internet all day. I'm sorry. So I turned the job down. I was devastated. I was in Germany for my look and see trip. I was ready to close the deal and he wouldn't budge on the amount. So I declined it. And 2 hours later, got a phone call from someone in my network and said, there's somebody you need to meet. He's on his way to your building. I was flying out later that day or the next day. He said, be ready. He's on his way there. He'll be there in 20 minutes. And he offered me an expat assignment. And so there's also like an element of saying no to something that's not right and doesn't serve you for the opportunity to open. That said, I knew that negotiation was maybe less popular in Germany, but I still did it anyway. Whether I was successful or not, in this case, I wasn't, but a different door opened for me. So I think you have to read the room and you have to do it in a way that's appropriate and have a conversation. It doesn't, I mean, negotiation already has a negative connotation. So let's change it to a conversation. Talk to me about what's possible. Talk to me about what is beyond the salary. Talk to me about the total comp picture. Talk to me about all the things possible. Talk to me about performance. If I'm successful and I bring in X revenue, talk to me about how I get compensated for that. You get to have those conversations and there's nothing aggressive or ugly about that. It's just a conversation.
I think you said something that really interesting that really kind of stood out is that a lot of times we assume that the only negotiation thing we could do is our salary, right? But you were mentioning other aspects of it. What are some other areas that maybe people don't even think about, but are other things that can be negotiated aside from salary when you do get an offer?
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously, salary, bonus, equity are probably your top three. But I've never had a car payment my whole career. I've always had car insurance and gas. I did happen to work in automotive, but if you're in any kind of a sales function and you're on the road, a car is absolutely part of it. And depending how high you go in the organization, you can also include that. That's an easy win. I'll tell you the reason why this long list, I'll tell you more in a moment, is interesting is because it's separate from the headcount bucket. It's actually separated out on the P&L. So it doesn't have quite the same glaring flag because on the P&L, the most expensive line item is the headcount bucket.
Labor.
Yeah. So we want, any of these other ancillary things to be added to the package, and many of them are after tax. So you could have an after tax, your chief membership, any of the communities that you're part of, conferences, executive coaching, MBA, full healthcare benefits, right? You can negotiate all of it. So there's lots of gap closures. There's sign-on bonuses. You could be leaving a pension, and how does that translate then to your new company? So, how do you close the gap? There are lots of ways to close it. I'll give you one quick example. I worked with an automotive technician early when I launched, and we got him a 40% raise, and only a very small portion of that was salary. The rest of it was in a co-created bonus structure. equity, car insurance, gas, and $1,000 of healthcare for him and his wife that they paid for directly. And that was a $2,700 in his pocket after tax dollars that he got to put back in his pocket. That's where the bulk of the raise came from. And he was no longer spending these after tax dollars. Is a massive success story, but only a few dollars an hour more. But all the other ancillary things are what really added up that make a big difference that people don't think about.
What I find that interesting now that I'm in the other side of the table as a business owner with probably between all the portfolio companies that I have, probably around 40 employees. Like I think a lot about how, like, if my employee negotiated $500 more a month in pay as an example, or $500 for car and insurance, like maybe it's even more beneficial for me as a business owner to pay that from a different item in the P&L. But that $500 for the employee is better if they receive it for car and insurance than if they received it as income, because it'll be taxed on income versus being saying, hey, this is it's not tax. And so it's actually, even if for me as a business owner, it could still be in the P&L a different line item, which means that I can justify easier that employee. It's actually it's not $500. It's technically $600 because of the, let's say, 20% taxes that they're saving. So it actually might even be better for the employee to negotiate those things.
Better for the employee, and also I think better for you because you've got some different opportunities to shift. You said something that I want to double tap on. Sometimes if you've got 40 employees and you've got people at different levels, you have to be thoughtful about how your people are sitting in those levels. You can't have someone $100,000 higher than the 5 other people that are doing the same similar work at that level, right? So there are times as a business owner where you say, I want her. She's the right person for the job. And she's like, we have a big gap, Daniel. Let's find a way to close the gap. And there's interest in you from a fairness standpoint, and also interest in you want her, she wants you. Find a way to make that work. Maybe that's a gross example from $100,000 range, but I think you get the point. There's a way to do it where you're not then totally blowing up your existing system either.
So someone hearing this, KL, is like, yes, this is awesome, great. I'm going to go negotiate everything. But I still have the fear that if I ask for too much, I come off as needy. And I also, what if I overextend how I ask? Is there a right way to ask? And before you answer, I will say disclaimer. I am nowhere as experienced as you in salary negotiation, but in my experience, I have never seen anybody, if respectfully asked to negotiate, lose the offer. Now, it doesn't mean 100% of the times you ask for something, they'll say yes, but I've never heard anybody lose that offer. So I always say, worst thing they can tell you is no. Best case scenario, you're going to get 10, 20% raise. But what would you suggest is the right way to ask? Is it through email? Is it through phone call? Is it in person? Like, is there a particular, like not necessarily script, maybe script or wording that you should be thinking about?
Yes, there is. So the problem happens when people come to me, they come to me when the offer is in their hand and it's actually too late. You need to be thinking about the money conversation before you get on the first call. And you need to plant the right seeds. You need to do your homework on what the market is paying. So we also need to talk more with our network about what you're paid and what your packages look like. And you never, ever should put a number on the table. So there is no ask. You pull your facts. You know where you were. You know how this role has changed. And you know ballpark the number that you would be really happy with. And if you ever have to talk about it, you talk about it in ranges, not a pure number. So when that recruiter or that HR calls and says, okay, what are your salary expectations? You never answer that question. You send it back to them and you say, talk to me about the range that you have budgeted for this role and talk to me about the total comp picture so we can get an understanding. First of all, I know nothing about your company, whatever I've researched. I know really not that much about this job, but a job description. I don't, like, there are so many holes for us to be able to fill before we can even get to the money conversation. So what I wish is that HR would stop asking that question. It's actually the worst question to be asking. Many times it's posted, and sometimes that's true or not true, right? If you post the range, you should always get them to talk first, because you could be lowballing the number and without even realizing it. So you only talk in ranges, but let them talk first and then tell me about the full picture. Well, the range is 100 to 150 and the bonus is 20%. In your mind, you're like, well, I'm only making 80 right now. Woohoo, that's good. And I only have a 10% bonus. But you might have backed yourself into a corner and said, oh, my expectation is 100. And you put yourself on the low end of the range. So you want to position yourself always. How can I position myself to be at the mid to high end of that range in conversation, in what I'm bringing to the table? And I even like this question. So if they said the range is between 100 and 150, I'd say, great. Talk to me about the rest of the comp picture and talk to me about what a person at the high end of that range looks like. What are they delivering? How are they showing up every day? That basically is your window on how to then go through the entire rest of the interview process to match that person that he or she just described.
Because from if you put on your chief human resource officer hat on for a second, and you're determining the offer that you're going to send someone, you're looking at their experience, their background, all of that, determining where within the range you're going to put them. But like, you're looking to see, it's like the risk reward of the company. Like, what is the likelihood that this person is going to come and do what the job that I'm hiring for going to do and over exceeds? And if I know that they're with a highly degree of certainty, they're going to come in and blow it out the water, you're going to go towards the higher range, right? So by you asking that question of like, tell me what is someone in the top of the range looks like, you're getting the answers to an open book test, right? Is that the psychology that you're trying, like, is that the mindset
Exactly.
that I'm understanding?
Exactly.
Because that's what makes it a win-win. Because at the end of the day, I have a question for you. At the end of the day, usually, and I think HR managers or the recruiters who are involved in sending out those offers, they don't lose money because they paid you more.
Actually, the recruiter makes more money when they pay you more, because the recruiter gets a percentage of your first year's salary and bonus. So it
And an
actually,
external recruiter, not an
recruiter
internal
is
recruiter.
working both sides.
Yeah. That would be like an external recruiter, right? But like an internal recruiter, they just usually are more higher salary plus a bonus based on placements, maybe more than
Yeah,
anything, right?
yeah. Internal recruiter. No, it doesn't change anything for them.
Yeah. Is there a wording, or how do you justify it? Like, how would a communication or an email saying like justifying a $10,000-$20,000 or 10-20% more sound like? Do I need to justify why I want 10 or more? Or do I just say, like, how would you, I know it would, like, I get it. Like, it's kind of like a lawyer and a CPA. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a CPA. Like, I would need to know like your personal situation and have the whole picture to really kind of write that script. And again, we'll talk about what you do and the value that you provide for your clients. I do want to make sure we create space for that. But like, what is the direction of the email? Do I want to justify why I want that? Or do I want to back it out with benchmarks on the industry or what I found online? Or like,
Yes.
how am I asking for this conversation? Do I negotiate via email, or do I send an email that really just leads to a conversation so that I can
I
talk to them?
never ever negotiate via email. Always get them back on the phone. Always. Zoom call or a phone call. Like I said earlier, you are doing your homework, right? You are doing the market analysis prior to coming in. Maybe you even are interviewing for other jobs. So you have the intel. And my favorite one is to always say, listen, based on other roles that I'm interviewing for and my market research, this is the range that I see myself. Or I see myself at the high end of the range based on my experience and based on what the market is paying. And then you stop talking. And I think the biggest mistake people make is they don't know how to use silence. They fill it because it's awkward. And then they start
Mhm.
negotiating against themselves. So I would always keep positioning yourself to the high end of the range, never give a number. Don't say, I want 10,000 more, I want 20,000 more, because you could get 50,000 more. Always talk about it more in general terms. But I love using facts. So bring it back to the market and to other roles that you're interviewing for. And that also tells the company that, oh gosh, she's in the she's having other conversations. We better come with our best and final offer.
I always explain to clients that asking for, like, say, getting a 10% raise, a company giving you an additional 10% raise, however you negotiate it, it's a lot cheaper than them having to restart the hiring process all over again. Like, the cost of that role being open many times is way more expensive than them just saying, yes, let's get you across the board and sign it. And I think candidates don't like they don't think about it from the business owner perspective. And they're like, you have 100 other candidates, just go. It's like, we've already said no to them. We discarded them. Like, the time of the hiring manager and the team to get back in the interview cycle, to get everything approved, it's way more expensive than just giving you an extra $20,000.
Not to mention the business is breathing down my neck to close this deal. The business is saying you do whatever it takes to get Daniel to sign because he is our guy. And you're right, the role being open costs the company a tremendous amount of money. Any turnover costs the company a tremendous amount of money. And believe me, HR doesn't want to have to go through this interview process again either. It's
Yeah.
a constant cycle. And if they went through the cycle and they went through 100 resumes and broke it down to 30 interviews or 10 interviews, they're exhausted. They want this sucker closed as much as you do.
Yep.
So you're absolutely right. And I think, again, people look at it from an emotional perspective from their side, that I need this job and I can't risk losing it. But if you came at it from a different perspective and you understood that side of the table, which is exactly what we're opening up today, then why not walk in? The worst that they can say is no. And if they pull the offer, because that would be just so weird. And frankly speaking, if they pull the offer, they're not your people anyway, right? Like, do you really want to work for a company that is behaving that way? And look, be also really thoughtful about how you show up in this conversation, that you're not an a-hole. You need to be
Yeah.
sure that you're showing up with the right attitude and energy that is about what you're going to bring to the organization and the impact that you're going to bring to the organization. It's not like, well, I just bought a house and I need more money. They don't care.
Yeah. I want to think about it from the other lens, and then I want you to, then we'll pivot to like exit packages. I am more concerned of somebody negotiating more and not being able to meet the additional expectations that that extra salary or bump generates. If I'm a business owner, right, and I interview someone and someone comes and negotiates and they want 50% more, 30% more. And I go, okay, like I see her point of view. I can see why she is not demanding, but is asking for more. If I accept that 30% more, in my head, as the way my brain works, I will have higher expectations for her because I'm paying her more, right? Like, my expectations to the CEO of my company is much higher than in a VA that's an assistant and that's not doing anything, right? Like, that sounds really bad. That's not doing as much impact in the overall company. So I guess what I would fear, and this is maybe my limiting belief, and maybe it's not the case, this is kind of why I'm asking this question, is that if somebody's able to negotiate it to the point where they negotiate more than they what actually can deliver, especially in a world where I feel like in the last 10 years, companies are going through layoffs much, much faster than they were before. That if I look at a department and I see that KL is the highest paid person in this department, but also one of the newest, she just was so good at negotiating, that you are now the first person that in the chopping block. And that because you were so good at negotiation, that now that actually puts you in a vulnerable spot when the layoffs come.
We're not
Limited
we're not
belief.
terminating people who are high performing. We're terminating people who are not performing, hopefully. So if KL is delivering, she deserves that extra raise. And I think it's maybe an older fashioned approach to say, well, the last in is the first out, or the most expensive people are the first to get cut. No, the people who are delivering and generating revenue and bringing impact to the organization are the ones that keep their job. When you mentioned the discrepancy between someone at a C-suite and someone at a lower level, I think where it gets interesting is when you've got 5 people all on the same level, 5 salespeople, and KL negotiated 30% more than the other 4, and KL is not delivering at that level. Well, that's a very different conversation.
Yes.
But I think you can't compare someone at this level. This will likely there will be a discrepancy and a gap. Where it becomes more obvious is when you can see it across the same person doing the same job. That person should not be getting paid 30% more because she is not delivering 30% more. That's when you sit down and have a conversation. Listen, you started 6 months ago. You negotiated the heck out of me. I said yes because I believed in you, but I'm not seeing the results. So, KL, what's going on? Let's talk about this. And, anyway, 30% would be a
Yeah.
pretty dramatic change from everybody else, probably not super fair. I would then flip that and say, okay, let's flip it to pay for performance. I'm going to reduce your salary. I'm going to increase your performance result. And let's look at that, or let's have a conversation about it. What's getting in your way? But that would be my thought on that.
Okay. Let's pivot this and say, okay, KL, I am not happy with my job. I'm really looking to, I'm probably going to look for another job. Right? I'm just looking for another job. I'm just not happy. There's rumors that there's going to be some layoffs. Do I quit? Do I tell my manager, hey, I would like to be on the layoff? Like I'll be the sacrificial lamb. What do I do? What do you suggest in that scenario?
Okay, well, first of all, you should never quit. You should always ask for a package. So if you wait to be laid off, you lose almost all of your negotiating power. So what I teach people to do is proactively ask for packages. And you can call it a sacrificial lamb. You can call it whatever you want. We craft a story that actually makes the business think this is a really good idea and that they don't need your role anymore, that, with the changes coming with the acquisition that was just had, or the financial results were really poor, understand the company is where it is, EBITDA is not there. I don't think you need my role anymore, but I'd like to be treated fairly. Or I hate my boss hates me. That's an easier one. Say, listen, you and I both know this is not working anymore. Happy to discuss a mutual transition package and, let's just find a way to do this so that we don't go through the misery of an ugly ending. Let's do this professionally and thoughtfully. And it's been incredibly successful. My most successful one, and I talk about this a lot on podcasts, but I had a woman, 35 years in one company, was not seeing eye to eye with her CEO. Nothing terrible, but she could smell the writing on the wall. Something wasn't feeling right. So she met me at an event. She said, I think I'm going to retire. And I said, I have a better idea. Let's have a conversation and let's craft your story. We crafted her story and she got $2.3 million and she was just going to retire. Mind blowing. Now, obviously, those don't happen every single day, but there are
You need
so
to
many
have
people.
35 years and not 35. You need to have a long time in a company and a lot of proven record of value.
That was 1 month for every year served in an SVP level. But that doesn't mean that you could have 12 years with the company, get 1 month for every year served, and you just got 12-month runway. And by the way, we got severance, we got bonus for the 3 years severance, 3 years bonus, 3 years equity, lifetime healthcare benefits, and coaching with me to figure out what she wanted to do next. So everything is negotiable. Everything is negotiable. And if you find a way to craft a story where you make it their idea, you actually do them a favor. And in the end, or, think about it this way. First of all, this woman wanted to bring her person in, and my client wasn't her person. There are so many situations where CEOs come in, VPs come in, they want to bring their buddies in. They want to bring the people that they trust. And if you're not on that list, you're feeling it. You are not getting invited to meetings. You are not getting the intel. You don't know what's happening. You're being left in the dark. You know the feeling. And the reaction that most people have, which is the wrong one, is they get emotional. And then they just get so frustrated that they quit instead of actually flipping it and having it work for them. And I will remind you, nothing I do here is a winner and a loser in negotiation. We always set it up as a win-win. So the idea is to craft a beautiful story that's going to work for you and make them like, oh, wow, we were going to fire her anyway. She's not working out anyway. She was on the list in 6 months when we do the layoffs anyway. And you have more negotiating power because if you get laid off in a group of 50, 100, 200 people, that we have to treat you all the same. I can't
Yeah.
treat you differently in how you
Yeah.
negotiate more because I can't do that. That would be discrimination. But if I do it outside of the window, you have way more leverage than you realize. It's just incredibly courageous. I'm going to add one more thing. When you proactively ask, you also don't go through the grieving process of being fired. You leave with your head held high with total dignity and total class that you were in the driver's seat of this conversation. So it's a very, very different result when you get laid off versus being in the driver's seat of having it.
Yeah. I love everything that you're sharing there because, again, now that I see it on both sides, it's a lot of times the business and the people in the business grow apart. And it just no longer makes sense for each party to be here. It's no longer a mutually beneficial relationship. And there's no such thing as a long-term relationship if it's not mutually beneficial. And like that example, probably with your client that got a 2 point, it's like the business grew apart. Your business went to a different direction. Your client had different goals that they wanted. And it was a win-win. $2.3 million sound like a lot of money. But if it's $1 billion, $100 million business, they wanted to bring it in. That's nothing. And that's nothing. And it's probably a win-win for the business itself. It's not like again, without all the context of the story and keeping the crime private, it probably felt like a win for the CEO too. And
It
we don't
was
even know.
because the CEO would have had to have had a hard conversation with her at some point to say it's not working because they
Yeah.
both were feeling it, right? So you end up actually, nobody wants to have hard conversations, something we
Yeah.
actually really need to work on and change. I have a client who's actually developing a coaching business to do this. It is so critically important that we learn how to have conversations, but until we do that, you put someone else out of their misery by presenting it this way. And it's shockingly powerful. And
Yeah.
it's fun because everyone that I meet says, Kale, I've never met anyone that does what you do. I'm like, I know. It's a really niche approach. The other thing though, before we even start talking about a negotiation, you have to have your ducks in a row. First
Yep.
thing I ask every client is, what is your financial runway? Because we do not know how long it's going to take for you to find another job. And if you already have another job lined up, we can also still negotiate an exit. But you have to know that the market is not going to flip on a dime and you're suddenly going to have a job tomorrow. So you better have your finances in a row because we don't know how much we're going to get from an exit perspective.
Yeah.
I mean, this
I also
woman,
think,
obviously, her life.
and this is like, again, this is a whole rabbit hole that we would go into. We just because of time, but like a lot of times too, from a company's perspective, it's they're protecting themselves from liability and from lawsuits and everything like that. And it's just a lot easier to just have a clean exit. Or also too, if you're a publicly traded company and you are a senior leader in that company, that needs to be disclosed to the investors. And if you're firing someone at that level, it looks worse than if it was a clean exit. And so there's just so many other factors that are just going into that. But to wrap it up, Kale, tell us a little bit more about what you do, the services you provide, and how clients can connect with you if they want to learn more about salary bump, exit packages, and everything else that you do.
I love that. Thank you. Well, listen, as I sat on the other side of the table for a big part of my career, I watched people really struggle and treat their job or their career like a job instead of the biggest financial asset that it is. So I am changing that. And I really help people across three critical moments. One, getting a new salary, growing strategically, which is I want to blow up my life. I'm 25 years an accountant. I hate accounting. I don't know what I want to do next. Help me figure that out. So that's my
Mhm.
career bump program. And then my exit bump. So the insider knowledge that I have from that side of the table is what makes what I do really unique. And the result is clients stop leaving money on the table and they start really building wealth through their career decisions. And I meet you where you are. Client that I work with is unique. I wouldn't say that every single thing that I do is bespoke, but not one client that I've worked with has been the same. Everyone has something unique that we have to pull in. And I think people really underestimate their own power and that they can advocate for themselves. And if you don't advocate for yourself when you're walking into an organization, what does that also say about you as a potential leader in that organization? They need to see how you're going to show up in these environments. They need to see how you're going to negotiate with their clients. They need to see, wow, that was a really powerful, great feeling. Like we didn't walk away feeling gross and dirty after the negotiation. It's a muscle that you have to learn how to build, or you're leaving between $1 million and $1.5 million over your career by not negotiating. Someone else is scooping that up. And why shouldn't it be you?
I I love that. And I remember telling our clients when we worked with a lot of college students, you work with more senior leaders at that point, but if you can negotiate $5,000 more a year with the average raise that you get for the, let's say, the 30 years, 40 years that you work in corporate, that itself, it, it's over $500,000 a year, let alone what that looks like when you're making 100, 200, 300, 400, $500,000, $2 million a year at a very executive level. So, okay, I love what you're doing. If somebody wants to learn more about you and reach out to you, what would be the best way for someone to connect with you, connect and
Follow me on
contact you?
LinkedIn. That's my number one platform. I post every day there. Of course, I'm on TikTok and Instagram and YouTube and all the other good channels, but that's the one where I play the most, and it's the most beautiful platform. And it's where my clients also are building their own networks and starting to figure out how they tap into networking in a new way and build new relationships. It's sadly only what, 3%, 3 to 5% of that platform, 1.3 or 4 billion people use it as a creator, like I do, like you do. And there's a lot of employees and regular people who work W-2 jobs that are starting to tap into this platform. So it's the platform that I love to play, and I look forward to seeing you there.
Yeah. Everyone who's listening, if you know someone or you that are looking to, maybe you're not at a job that you like, and before you quit, think about exit packages. And if you're in the process of getting a job, don't wait until the offer letter. This might be a good chance. Like you're in the process, maybe you just got invited to your first interview to work with someone, with KL or someone to help you with this, or share this with someone who could use it. If you enjoy this, again, we don't run any ads on this podcast. We do this all to try to help people land their dream jobs. Share this with someone. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you guys on the next episode.